Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Kopi Chats with me, your host, Wei Lin. Well, it's been a while, and are you ready? Are you ready for the start of the massive news dump? You know, the most important things that you need to know. Yes, of course you are. Of course you are. Let's start right away on Malaysia Kini, Malaysia's most respected, I reckon, news site. US official, and that is National Security Advisor Mr. Jake Sullivan, saying China will face consequences. It will absolutely face consequences if it helped Moscow evade sanctions over the war in Ukraine. It's reported that Russia has asked China for military equipment since the start of the invasion of Ukraine, sparking concern in the White House that Beijing may undermine efforts, to help Ukraine defend their country. Asked about the reports, Liu Pengyu, spokesman for China's embassy in Washington, said, "I've never heard of that," which is perfectly credible, right? He may actually never have heard about that. He said he found the situation in Ukraine disconcerting and added, "We support all and encourage all peaceful efforts, efforts that are conducive to a peaceful settlement of the crisis," which is very, very neutral, which has been the official Chinese stance on the matter all along. Sullivan told CNN that Washington believed China was aware that Russia was planning some action in Ukraine before the invasion took place, although Beijing have not understood the full extent of what was planned. I am very skeptical because I last saw that there was news 6,000 Chinese citizens are currently in Ukraine. They haven't left. Maybe they're unable to leave. Now, there was already talk previously about countries like the United States and countries in Western Europe pulling out their citizens, advising citizens to leave before the conflict began. Now, if we are to believe that China knew that the conflict was to take place, I find it very difficult to believe that China would not pull out her citizens from Ukraine. So I don't find this believable at all. And that is just one snippet of this meeting, though. There was a long 7-hour talks, between the U.S. and China that took place in Rome. Here, nice, beautiful city, with China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi. So Jake Sullivan's been working very hard to convince his Chinese counterparts to play ball on Ukraine. But it doesn't seem likely. See, he's just saying things like, "I'm just going to reiterate that we do have deep concerns about China's alignment with Russia at this time." Yes. It's also been reported that Sullivan is laying groundwork for a call between President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping. However, yes, here we go. Sullivan and Yang Jiechi met in October, laid the groundwork for the virtual summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping the following month. Yes, sorry, so that was the previous time, but it would be quite reasonable that they're following up to do the same here this time round as well, laying the groundwork. Now, I don't understand why Jake Sullivan, insists on claiming that the Chinese knew about the invasion when I don't know, it doesn't seem likely. And he's insisting here that China face consequences. I don't know what Mr. Sullivan's thinking. Like, who does he think he's dealing with? Is it somebody who thinks will be afraid because the U.S. promises firm consequences? I don't think that's a thing, Mr. Sullivan. And let me tell you why this feels like desperation. It really does. I'll explain to you. Here, CNN reports, even CNN, a very friendly friend of Joe Biden. Biden turns to countries he once sought to avoid to find help shutting off Russia's oil money. So President Joe Biden's urgent global search for help shutting off Russia's oil revenues is leading to regimes he once sought to isolate or avoid. And that is true. Biden officials traveled to Venezuela over the weekend. Biden may travel to Saudi Arabia as the U.S. works to convince the kingdom to increase oil production. And a looming nuclear deal could bring significant volume of Iranian oil back on the market. So does that just reek of desperation? Yes, because these regimes are all anti-United States to the core. So do you now believe that Jake Sullivan's been given an impossible task to threaten and cajole the Chinese, who he has absolutely no leverage over them? The worst that he can do is to say, I promise severe consequences. Very severe. In fact, Iran, at least one of these countries, is so unimpressed that it's been reported. Here you go, March 14th, just yesterday. Iran attacks Iraq's Erbil with missiles in warning to U.S. and allies. Iran attacked Iraq's northern city of Erbil. That appeared to target the U.S. and its allies. The missiles came down in areas near a new U.S. consulate building. There you go. So that's the part that's the most important. U.S. officials said that no Americans were hurt and no U.S. facilities were hit. But what does this tell you? While it is known that Joe Biden wants to get closer to Iran, Iran is absolutely having none of it, and they have no inclination to be friends with the Biden administration at all. So you might think, oh wow, that sounds really bad. That's not even the end of it. I'm not even at the best parts yet. Here, screenshots of the reporting on the matter. Leaders of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates declined requests to speak to President Biden during the Ukraine crisis. So they didn't take Biden's calls, but they both took calls from Putin, as per the Wall Street Journal. Here's another piece of reporting. Active and former government officials have told the Washington Examiner that the Quds Force current commander in Iran is believed to have been tasked by Khamenei, supreme leader, I think Ayatollah Khamenei, with avenging Soleimani with a high-profile assassination of a U.S. official. What do we understand by this? What are you meant to understand by this? When news like this leaks, it is meant to, of course, be consumed by the public, for the public to know, for Iran to show her strength and her, resolve. And that's what this is meant to do. And then right around the same time, you hear that Iran fires missiles into a U.S. consulate under construction in Iraq. Here also, the New York Times reports senior U.S. officials traveling to Venezuela to meet with the government of President Nicolas Maduro, getting close to their, former enemy, Nicolas Maduro. And the Pentagon rejected a surprise announcement from Poland that it would give the U.S. its MiG-29 fighter jets for use by Ukraine. So Poland offers fighter jets to the U.S. to help Ukraine. So there's a little bit of background to this. Why would Poland offer their fighter jets to the United States, who have, more fighter jets than anybody in the world? Well, it's because the U.S. was suggesting to Poland that Poland might give these fighter jets to Ukraine to help, because Poland's right on the border with Ukraine, a neighbor, and for them to offer this assistance would be quite easy to do, but politically impossible, because this would very well drag Poland into war with Russia. No way that Poland want to do that. So Poland, in a delicate, diplomatic way to decline this suggestion, is to offer those very same fighter jets to the United States and say, why don't you take them and then give them to your friend Ukraine? The Associated Press reports the transfer of the MiGs to Ukraine is fraught with complications that could further inflame tensions with Russia. Yes, it could. Yes, it could. That's why Poland doesn't want to do it. So what does this tell us? Well, obviously, there's a huge amount of scrambling and, a desperation from the Biden administration to deal with the Ukraine crisis, and they're just doing they're scrambling. I wouldn't say they're doing a great job, but they're trying. Okay. Now, what does this tell us? It's not looking good. Like, if you are a ally of the United States, this does not inspire any kind of confidence that the United States, is feared by her enemies, and because Iran and Venezuela and What are these? Iran, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, who's more like a frenemy, are having no respect, absolutely. Now, moving on to something else. Enough about Joe Biden bashing. So, a few days ago, I spoke about the people in Singapore being keen to join the fight against Russia. The Ministry of Home Affairs warns against joining the war, saying that Singapore citizens who decide to go will be prosecuted. Not maybe, not possibly, not please don't do it. You will be prosecuted. If I'm not mistaken. Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Imprisonment may extend to 15 years, and to which a fine may be added. So you may be fined and jailed. Okay. Today asked the Ministry of Home Affairs, any other person in Singapore who contacted the Embassy of Ukraine were Singaporeans. On this matter, the ministry had no further comments. Now, if it was a no, you would expect that the ministry would just say no. Nobody who contacted the Ukraine embassy were Singaporeans. When they say that, we have no comment. It's just a tacit admission that there were. Singaporeans are starting to decide, to entertain the idea of fighting on behalf of a foreign country. Somebody asked, now the South China Morning Post writes, is it legal? And this is a great question because, this is on everybody's mind. It's like, obviously, at least they're the people who want to go to Ukraine, even in Singapore. So citizens of many countries are considering this, and they cover a few countries here. Let's see. In the United States, U.S. citizens are not barred from serving in another military. There's only one law about this that goes back to 1794, the Neutrality Act, prohibiting citizens from making war against foreign governments at peace with Washington. But apparently, this law is rarely used, right? Rarely enforced in modern history. And this is not to say that Americans don't join foreign armies, because I'm pretty darn sure they're private military contractors, people who just join up in foreign countries, have dual citizenship, all that sort of thing, and nobody's ever prosecuted for that. The UK Foreign Office, let's see, Britons traveling to Ukraine could be subject to prosecution upon return, but this is also very sketchy because when asked what kind of charges would apply, the spokesperson for the British Foreign Office declined to comment because they don't know. Is there a law? It's not clear, right? Again, there's another law, Foreign Enlistment Act, going back to 1870, right? Now, there are a few other countries. Australia's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, told reporters that there are uncertainties about the legal position of foreign civilian combatants, but say, please don't go. India, Germany, and Canada have they have not taken a stand against citizens fighting in Ukraine. Right there, here we go. Germany has said it will not prosecute volunteers who join. Danish Latvian leaders said they would allow their citizens to volunteer. Canadian Defense Minister Anita Anand said Canadians can make their own individual decision. So, just for the context, right? It is quite common for countries to say very little about their citizens fighting in wars abroad, because this hasn't happened for a long time, and it's something that is not a pressing concern. It's not a pressing concern. But apparently, Singapore would be one of those places where, no, you're absolutely not allowed to go. Yeah, Singapore has to wrap you, protect you for your own good. Now, if you think that, all these, you'll be all grizzled army veterans, experienced fighters in Ukraine, no, that's not necessarily the case. Look, the Ukrainian army is now taking on a lot of conscripts. So here are the BBC reports that the reporter met a group of young men who had volunteered at a center to fight in Kiev to fight for Ukraine. Most of them in their late teens, not long out of school. And they said that after 3 days basic training, you hit for frontline or very close to it. Now, I think it'll be quite reasonable to say that that's kind of insane. That's absolutely nuts. In 3 days, can you learn to be a soldier? I have not undergone any military training myself, but I know that in Singapore, where every male has to serve mandatory military service, your basic military training takes months. What, 6 months? I think it's something like that. So for these volunteers or sometimes conscripts, because I understand that, yeah, Ukrainian President Zelensky has issued a decree, requiring all able-bodied males to be conscripted. Yet you're not allowed to leave Ukraine if you're able-bodied adult male. So these are volunteers, but not all of them are. And they are being given 3 days basic training and then off to the front lines, where they will most certainly die. Why? I'm not being pessimistic about this. I'm being realistic. And why do I say that? Well, in 3 days, you may learn to shoot. You may learn to operate, like radio, radar, some military equipment, how to communicate. But you've never done, you don't have enough time to do exercises, to coordinate your movements, right, with your squad, to, be effective, like hide effectively, move quickly, when to rush forward, when to hold back, when to hold your position. Yeah, 3 days is nothing. And then it says here clearly, unambiguously, that they were told they would head for the front line. That is actually sending them to their death. And you may think, okay, maybe that's just what these guys told the BBC, but it's not, because here in The Economist, fighters with the Ukraine's Foreign Legion are being asked to sign indefinite contracts. Some have refused. So some are being asked to sign. So there are, overseas volunteers who have decided to fight on behalf of Ukraine. And they were told that they would get some basic training and then head out to the front lines. And let me show you. Now it tells a story of, what's his name? Prede, I think. Prede was headed to help, right? He said he was told the new recruits are destined for Kiev. A spokesman for Ukraine's Ministry of Defense said that we are focused on trained people. Untrained people are not going to be sent to the front, which contradicts what the BBC report was saying. And then Prede as well, he says, let's see. The most troubling turn of events came just after breakfast. The volunteers lined up and told it was time to sign a contract. It told their pay would be this, and they have to remain in the Ukraine Foreign Legion for the duration of the war. This contract put them under the same obligations as all Ukrainian men under martial law declared on February 24th. No man between 18 and 60 is allowed to leave the country. There you go. There you go. And you might think, well, it's war, and conscription is a thing, and all men have to serve. Okay, maybe you can say that. I mean, it's reasonable position. It's a reasonable position. It's not unreasonable. But let's see. There you go. You were told that you would go where you are most needed. They would get 3 to 5 days training. They were told, staff informed them that the first 2 days would be rudimentary map reading and medical skills. Third day, weapons would be handed out and volunteers would practice firing them on a range. Then all of them would be dispatched to the front. Again, that's absolutely bonkers. So this is the situation in Ukraine right now, and it's not a good thing at all. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there was a missile attack, a Russian missile attack on Ukrainian training facility, barracks of some of these international volunteers. The death toll was reported to be something like 35 people, with dozens more injured. and that really uh, killed the enthusiasm of many. I've seen some threads where people talk about someone they know turning back after that, just going off to the Polish border and giving up on this because you're not given, proper training, and you're not given proper support. Of course, you have 3 days of training. You're not there's no anti-air, support to protect you from bombing raids. So it's absolutely horrible. And there's a joke here. It's a very dark joke, but there is a subreddit, a group on Reddit, the very popular social network for people who want to volunteer for Ukraine. And obviously there must have been at least one guy, who uses Reddit and was there and was talking about all this stuff and then getting just utterly destroyed. So now it's looking really smart, Singapore not allowing citizens to go. Now, whether or not you agree with that, okay, that's a personal thing. So I won't tell you what to think. Now, however, is this the first time that you see such a thing, that a foreign country, calls for volunteers to fight on her behalf? No, actually, no. ISIS did it. Anybody remember ISIS? Of course, no, none of us, you watching this and myself, we would never go fight for ISIS. And maybe that's a terrible example, but there's more. There's also the French Foreign Legion, which is a legit, real thing. It's been around for hundreds of years. If you are, it's been around since the Middle Ages. And I think this is the proper website. Well, I'm not exactly sure. The French Foreign Legion created on March 10th, 1831. It's old. It's a long time. And in fact, coincidentally, I just watched a movie about the French Foreign Legion called Legionnaire by Jean-Claude Van Damme, a film from 1998. If you have the right streaming service, I recommend that you watch it. It's really fairly brutal. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and it's fun to watch, but there's not much of him doing his martial arts. It's really much more about the war and the savagery and the camaraderie, that sort of thing. Really good film. Unexpectedly. Better than I expected. Yeah. But yes, people have been doing that in the past. And they do that in the past. Even today, the French Foreign Legion still exists. And serving the French Foreign Legion, upon completion of tour of duty, you are eligible for French citizenship. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So you might wonder, what motivates someone to go fight in foreign land? Well, I suppose, sometimes the personality of the individual. Some people want to be commandos. Some people love adventure, more than anything else. And they're strong and they're young and they have, no great love of structured, orderly society. Some people are like that. And maybe part of the contributing factors would be this sort of thing. Propaganda. So the mayor of the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv claims that 48 schools were destroyed in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. As reported on Today Online, Singapore, one of Singapore's newspapers. The Ukrainian city of Kharkiv is under relentless bombardment. The mayor says, 48 schools have been destroyed. As reported uncritically by the Today newspaper. I don't know what's up with you today, generally papers in Singapore. I think you need to be less credulous, Do you believe this? Anything is possible. I'll grant you that. But I feel that we really shouldn't uncritically accept it, right? Well, why? Because, well, first of all, are there 48 schools? Second of all, where are the photos? Third of all, who was in there, right? Who was in there? Now, here's the thing that you need to think about. If you're a defender, you're Ukrainian, you're defending your city, where would you set up? best place would be somewhere that the enemy is reluctant to shoot at, wouldn't it be? So if I had a chance to set up my defenses in the city, I would probably choose to be somewhere that is less likely to be shot at, which would be someplace where that civilians normally are. And if I was responsible, I would clear the area out before I set up my defenses. And that puts me in a great situation, both because, you know, they're less likely to shoot at me, and if they do shoot at me, well, it's bad for their PR because, you know, somebody can take a photo, it can go out on video, and I may not even be killed, you know. It's just the mere fact of my building being attacked is bad for the enemy. So either it's a win-win. Why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you set up that way? Because if you're shot at, it's a PR win for your side. If you're not shot at, great, because you weren't shot at. And that's not the only piece of fake news even. And it's not the only, I'm picking on Today Online, but that's maybe a little unfair. Look at this. There's an American journalist killed by Russian forces, according to NBC Universal News, syndicated on Yahoo News. Looking here, it says that the Russian airstrike hit a military base about 20 miles from the Polish border. That's the one that I showed you in the short video. Attack killed at least 35 people and injured more than 130. And that was a base that is allegedly used to train foreign fighters. Of course, you don't know anything for sure, but that's what it appears to be. That's what people seem to be saying. Okay, and that's what I would share with you. And it says here, final line, U.S. State Department confirmed that an American journalist was killed by Russian forces in Ukraine. The State Department, meaning the official, you know, government spokespeople confirmed this piece of news. And you think that it's true, except that it's not. The New York Times has confirmed that it was a Ukrainian checkpoint, meaning that it was a Ukrainian checkpoint from which, you know, shots originated at the reporter who was killed, Brent Renaud. Brent Renaud. So you have to understand this in the context of the testimony of his colleague who said they were shot at, turned around and continued to be shot at. Yes. And you can see his colleague here, who was taken to hospital.
Tell me please, what is your name?
Juan.
Juan? Where are you from?
The U.S.
Yes. What happened to you?
We crossed the first bridge in Irpin. We're going to film other refugees leaving, and we got into a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed a checkpoint, and they start shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's two of us. My friend is Brent Renaud, and he's been shot and left behind.
And how is he?
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know what happened to him.
I saw him being shot in the neck, and we got split, and I got pulled into the.
And who brought you here?
An ambulance. I don't know.
Tell me please, what is it?
So, there you see it. Now it looks legit. It looks legit. And now you know that the U.S. State Department has also been spreading news that's patently, flatly untrue. So I think it's right to be skeptical. It's right to be skeptical. You can't trust anything that comes out of the news on this war. Like, not even what I'm telling you. I mean, you can take it with a pinch of salt, as you should. But I think why I feel that what I'm doing is worthwhile is because, well, I am advocating the skepticism. I'm suggesting to be skeptical about what we're told. So I think that's useful, and that's what I'm trying to do. All right, moving on really quickly. Did you know that China faces the highest number of daily COVID cases since Wuhan in 2020? It says here on the South China Morning Post that the National Health Commission reports 3,500 new local cases. And this is huge news. Highest number of cases since Wuhan in 2020. Let's see. 17 million people were locked down in the city of Shenzhen. Let's see, where does that say? And it says here, look at this. 39 of the cases in Guangdong province were found in Shenzhen, which is subject to a week-long partial lockdown as a result. Let's see, where can I find the population? Oh, no. Well, sorry, but yes, Shenzhen has a population of 17 million and it's been locked down over 39 cases. Doesn't that make you a little suspicious? Why is the lockdown so aggressive? Right? Even with, you know, the spread of a virus, isn't it a bit of a overkill to lock down 17 million people over 39 cases? Now, here I see there's a very good analysis on what's going on in Hong Kong and China right now from Mr. John Byrne Murdoch, works for the Financial Times. So he shows some very good charts which I want to quickly take us through. He says that deaths in Hong Kong are really high compared to elsewhere for the same caseload. You see here, this is in blue are daily cases per 100,000 people, and daily deaths in red. Daily deaths in New Zealand very low, even though there's also a high caseload right now, whereas deaths in Hong Kong are very high. The rate of death is very high, and that's very strange. Now, New Zealand is almost fully vaccinated, and Hong Kong has a rather low-ish vaccination rate. And there are some very good charts here following on. Let's see. Hong Kong's case fatality rate ratio is now above England's, at the highest point of England's case fatality ratio. You can see here Hong Kong is all the way in this point here. Now, Hong Kong is doing badly even by world standards, not just compared to Asia Pacific neighbors. You can see here, this is, what's this? 7-day average of COVID deaths per million people. So deaths per million, Hong Kong is really out there, shooting above everyone else. The cumulative view also looks absolutely awful because Hong Kong has kept it all relatively under wraps until just a few weeks ago. So you can see all of that. This is tremendously bad. And here you go. Have a look at this. Now here is vaccination by age group, and the older you go in Hong Kong, the less vaccinated people are, which is very different from elsewhere. If you look here, let's see. Okay, so sorry. Elsewhere, even in Singapore, places like Singapore or New Zealand, a lot of elderly are vaccinated, but not so much in Hong Kong. Yes, here we go. Vaccination status among over 80s is very low in Hong Kong, not as low in China, but now we're seeing a big spike in both Hong Kong and China, and that is a big worry for everyone. Nobody wants to see, COVID continuing, to spread, but that is what's going on apparently. Now, and that of course, is bad for all people. Now, let me continue. Now on to the rest of the world, though. The rest of the world seems that, COVID seems to be like endemic. We're treating it as endemic, and we're really learning to live with it. But there's this question, pandemic surveillance, are we going to keep using our contact tracing tech? And that's a really pertinent question. From Seoul to London to Singapore, everywhere else, people continue to use these contact tracing apps, even though contact tracing is no longer a thing. But it appears that we're all just used to it and not really thinking too much about it. Oh, look here. Teachers in New Delhi have filed a lawsuit to stop the use of biometrics in an attendance app that they say invades their privacy, which I think is a rare case of people, standing up for their privacy rights. In many places, including Singapore, I think including South Korea, people are going along with it, still waiting for the pandemic to really burn itself out. But ultimately, the article concludes, people are willing to share their data if they really see a benefit. And I think that's true. Here you go. It's a quote from Mr. Patrick Hennig, director of Germany's Luca app, which is used for contact tracing. If things are done correctly, then there is no issue. The general population will accept it. And I think that's broadly true. If you are, like me, kind of keen on privacy, that doesn't sound like great news. But alas, I think that is the reality of the world that we live in. People are really willing to give up the privacy. I mean, come on. With email, with social media, TikTok, what have you, we're basically agreeing to all the terms that says the tech companies own your location, own your user data, or if they don't own your data, they give themselves an unlimited license to use it as they see fit, and we just agree to that. So it does seem like we can't. There's no way to go back from that. But I would say the next step, and this you can hold me to this, my prediction would be that we will start to ask a reciprocal transparency from governments. That is, well, if people are going to give up their privacy and transparency, we expect the same from our governments. And I think the people who come up with this idea, who come up with this, to advocate this, will likely it gets a good reaction. I think there'll be a good reaction to this. To stand up and say, hey, we the people are willing to give up, some privacy, but we also expect our government to be exceptionally open and transparent because, this is the 21st century, right? And I think that is something that we can expect to see in the future. Okay. Moving on. Today, now I want to give the unofficial award for worst person on the internet today. The worst person on the internet today is Mr. Georgi Bushtin. Georgi Bushtin is the worst person on the internet because Mr. Bushtin is doing the Hitler comparison. The Hitler comparison is the worst thing. Worst thing. Don't do it. I'm not going to make it this. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, oh, are you comparing this to Hitler? No, I'm not. I'm just saying that this is really bad. And I'll tell you why. Because you don't even need to know the contents of this. It's giving a little historical context, saying, what did he do? What is his justification? What happened in the past and how does it, sound familiar? It should. And like that. All these things. But the problem with this is that what happens when you call someone Hitler? Well, the label becomes meaningless. Why? Because so many people compare things and other people to Hitler. So it lost its emotional punch. Yeah, shouldn't you reserve this absolute, most high level, most powerful insult for those who truly deserve it, right? So if we say Hitler killed 6 million people, shouldn't we reserve this for somebody who's killing, at least 1 million? Maybe 1 million at least? Before, it's just so that, it's kind of in the same ballpark. Now, maybe that will happen in time, but yeah, maybe that's what it ought to be. It ought to get close to that point before you can say, this man is actually kind of like Hitler, right? So you're minimizing it, you're diminishing that label, and it dehumanizes the other person, right? Dehumanizes the other person. And if you talk about it that way, you can't see Putin as a human being. Then how do you make peace with him? How can you make peace with a non-human, with Hitler? So you're just advocating for something that takes us further from peace, not closer to peace. And lastly, there's not an argument. He's saying that, Putin is using tactics that Hitler would have approved of. But is that an argument? No. No, it's not. You're just saying, oh, look at him. He's so bad. He's like Hitler. Is that an argument? No. But what it is, it's emotional manipulation. So, Mr. Bushtin is, Dr. Bushtin is emotionally manipulating us. And today newspaper, come on, you should know better, right? You should know better than to publish unvarnished, unpolished, plain piece of propaganda, emotional manipulation. This is why people want to go, fight in Ukraine. Stop it, okay? And shame on you, Mr. Bushtin. Sorry, Dr. Bushtin. You are the worst person on the internet. I don't care if you're a visiting research professor at the blah, 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 or my former university, my alma mater. Doesn't matter. Or if you're a former Hungarian diplomat. Because you're obviously emotionally manipulative asshole. Okay, enough about that. Moving on. So I want to come back to this topic that I covered previously. So for those who are not in the know, there's a member of parliament in Singapore who proposed the idea of timestamps on degrees, university degrees. Now, why did he say that? Well, he clarified saying that maybe you can have these degrees that require follow-up testing every so often in the future to keep them up to date. Now, everybody hated it because everybody got really angry. They felt, I already did all my studying. Why do you make me study some more? Are you trying to devalue my degree because I worked so hard for it? I have to keep refreshing it. What about people from other countries, other universities? They don't have to do it. No, what kind of imposition? What kind of asshole are you for making me study harder even though I already did all my time? So that's the background to this, and the article proclaims, this idea of expiry dates on degrees is rightly panned, right? Now, with the cool hits that time has given us, distance from the topic, I want to ask, why is the idea of the expiry dates on degrees rightly panned, right? Why? So is it simply because oh yeah, I worked so hard, I don't want to keep studying it anymore? Okay, maybe, but let's first try to play along with the author's question. How do universities up their game? And by this I reckon that I skimmed the article talking about how can universities stay current and relevant, produce better quality graduates, all that sort of thing, right? So it seems to me like this is a self-answering question, because here you go. First, she pans the idea of the expiry date on degrees. Then asks, how do you get university up their game? Well, how about this? You can offer the degrees that can be refreshed. So maybe you don't call them expiry dates because maybe they don't expire, right? If you don't refresh them, they're just as good as any other degree in the world, which never get refreshed, right? So if it's not refreshed, it's just the same as any other degree that's ever been awarded in history. But if you do choose to refresh it, well then, you are exceptionally current on all knowledge in your field. If you're a doctor, you know the latest research. If you're an engineer, you know the latest technologies of your field. You know how to construct buildings better. You know the clean technologies that go into constructing safer, more efficient buildings, energy efficient buildings. Again, I've been for this idea from the start. As you may have guessed. And it just seems like a missed opportunity. And I won't take you through the rest of the article because there's a lot of things that kind of meander all over the place. Our university is doing enough, blah, 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 online classes. But it feels like there's one good idea. The best idea is the one panned right in the title of the article. Yeah, bashed here is the best idea. Everything else are online learning, blah, 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 blah. These are peripheral. If Singapore were to award degrees that, had a refresher tag and said this graduate is totally up to date on the latest in their field, wow, that candidate for a job is so much more attractive than the other people, from some, I don't know, even at a Taiwanese university who studied like 20 years, got a degree 20 years ago, never been up to date since. You don't know that they have, but the Singaporean guys got a degree that was like refreshed like 5 years ago. Wow, amazing. That guy knows everything in the field, right? So, yeah. Okay, last topic. The China-backed Malaysian megacity project struggles to gain momentum. Now, this is an interesting one. Look, I need to tell you this. There's a thing called the Forest City project in the Malaysian state of Johor, which is my hometown, which has been overshadowed by coronavirus pandemic, and is aiming for completion in 2035. So this is a mega city project. It was going to have 700,000 residents. Huge, and it's going to be a forest city. So it's going to be very environmentally friendly, very green, very beautiful. Look at this artist rendition. Actually, it looks absolutely beautiful. And here's the official website. You can see how green it is. You can see, you know, how beautiful the landscaping is. And there will actually be man-made islands that you would live on. All your facilities will be around here. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It will be 60% owned by the Country Garden Group of China and 40% owned by a Malaysian company. So what is it like now? Well, let me show you. Here, travel bloggers Vagabond Journey. I have a blog post inside China's ghost city in Malaysia. Okay, let's take a quick look, yeah? So, let's see.
Endemic rate as shorelines are exchanged for development land.
Takes to make like apartment towers like out at sea and like a parking lot of like yachts, right? So like you have to drive your yacht up to get to your house here. Giant monitor list. Oh, what's your name, man?
My name is Masud.
Look, it looks so empty and half done, incomplete. Construction still going on, far from done. You can look across. Oh yeah, looking across the water.
Half Malaysian and half Singapore. Half Singapore. That's all Singapore.
While Iskandar waterfront city doesn't formally meet the definition of a new city, the basic idea is the same. Create a massive amount of luxury housing, a 5-star living environment, a new cosmopolitan upper middle class identity, and then sell it to the continent's new rich, who seem to love nothing more than stashing cash in real estate.
Country Garden 5-star living for you. This project names.
5-star living for you. That's
These places, you know,
Look at that.
big business and big government.
All those buildings.
Built by, you know, corrupt developers and I don't
The
know.
occupancy rate is really low, as I understand it.
I like these places. At the start, I didn't really know. I was just kind of like.
So I'm going to stop here. I will post the links to every single article that I've shown into the show notes, into the description below. So, you know, look in the description below if you'd like to follow up on these. So why is this interesting? It gives you a bit of a sense of some China's ambitions. So this is my home state of Johor. So this was announced a few years ago. Development went on. They're going to build 700,000 homes. As you can see, there's a lot. You can see a lot has already been built, but more is to come. It's expected to go on until 2035, when it will finally be complete. Let's see. Gallery. Do I get a gallery? Yeah, check it out. And together with this, there was meant to be a high-speed rail originating in Singapore, passing right next to this forest city and going to Bangkok, I believe, or Kuala Lumpur at least. Yeah, so a high-speed rail that would take you from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur in 45 minutes or so. And now it's currently, the concept was also that this would be, you know, an attractive investment for mainland Chinese because they could buy this home in Malaysia and very easily get a permanent resident status, some kind of permanent visa to stay in Malaysia. However, the Chinese government changed their rules around foreign investment, so it made it a lot more difficult for Chinese investors to buy these homes, and they started marketing it to Malaysians and Singaporeans. But that was the original idea. And there's been some criticism, things like, most of the construction of this project would be done by Chinese managers with South Asian laborers from Bangladesh. So Malaysians would not actually be that involved in it, even though it's on Malaysian land. And then there was criticism that, well, Malaysians will not even be living in it. You expect to sell a lot to rich Chinese people. And that's always been a consistent criticism of China's Belt and Road projects all across the world. And it all comes through here, and you can see, this is a pretty good example of a Belt and Road project. So much promise, so much money put into it, but with real problems like not much local involvement. Seemed to be like it would be a foreign enclave in a host country that may or may not want them to be there. Getting involved with like high-speed rail from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur that ultimately proved too expensive even for a whole country's treasury in Malaysia. It was Malaysia that put an end to the project, and so you can see how much aggressive promising what aggressive promises were made, but a lack of follow through. Yeah, and there's a high chance, non-trivial chance that this will kind of sputter out and be a whole lot of abandoned buildings, half done, all over the place. But we will see. We will see, because it hasn't reached its end yet, and we will find out eventually. But hey, if you want some nice real estate, I hear that they're offering pretty good deals now because you're trying really, really hard to sell all this property, to fill it up. So Forest City, check it out if you're looking for real estate investments. I get absolutely nothing from that. I'm not, have no financial interest. I'm just talking about it for fun. All right. That's all I got for you today, dear audience. I hope you had a great one because, as you can see, I'm smiling all the time as I'm talking to you. Have a great time. And I will talk to you again, most likely tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.